Welcome to Spotlight. I'm your host, Amitha. Join us weekly to get inspired by guests who will bring us their success stories and transformational events. Our guest today is the Director, South Asia at Seneca College. He's taking big steps to make the transition between the Indian and the Canadian educational system easier. It's my pleasure to welcome to our show Mr. Prashant Srivastava. So nice to have you here.
Thank you.
I'm so much looking forward to hear about what's happening to make this transition easier. But first of all, let's get to know you a little bit more. So tell us a little bit more about your upbringing and education.
Sure. So I'm from India, from UP, and I grew up in Lucknow, and then I did my high school school education in Lucknow, and then for my engineering, I did it from Maharashtra, from D.Y. Patil College of Engineering in Kolhapur. After I completed my engineering, at that time it was a trend. Most of us, they were completing engineering and getting into MBA or a business degree. So I took that trend, but I took that trend abroad and I applied to different universities across the world. And I was accepted in a Canadian university, and that's how I came to Canada in 2003 to do my MBA.
Nice. So when you landed here, what were some of the challenges you faced? Because a lot of us do that when we do this transition.
So it was a day and night difference, actually.
Okay.
At that time, in 2002, 2003, India was getting changed with reforms, with the modernization. But when I came to Canada, landing at the airport itself was a very different experience. Means things were properly organized. There were rules to cross the roads, which I'm sorry to say we did not pay much attention while growing up at that time. So it was a transitional challenges, absolutely. For me, myself, even traveling across India, I had traveled across Mumbai, Delhi, but coming to Vancouver, coming to Canada was a very different experience. And more so getting into a very small city called Nanaimo, where there were only 80,000 people. So you can travel miles, you won't see people. So it was very challenging, I would say, for me.
So what were some of the things that kind of made it easier, or was it more within yourself, using your resources to find it easier to make that transition, or did you have people to help you out?
So, of course, I had people to help me out. If I look back and reflect back, and I thank them from bottom of my heart. And they were from the university, they were from the community, and they were very welcoming. So they were Canadians, they were Indo-Canadians, and but again, initial days were challenging, and again, like. Not to give up, that was in the mind, that prevented me of regretting, because many times we regret our decisions. So, and coming back from a different education system was also challenging to adapt to the system in Canada. So these were transitional challenges, yes, I would say so.
So that was then, when you landed here, you had all these challenges. You did not give up, because within you, you had a goal. You wanted to establish yourself here. And this is now. Between then and now, what has your professional life looked like thus far?
So my own, like, going through with the system in Canada, and then working in the university system, in the college system now in Toronto. So that gave me some aspirations, I would say, to be part of the system in international education, where I can be as a mentor, as a guide for future students from India, and I can share my own story, own journey of being an international student to a Canadian citizen to students in India. So that became my goal, actually, and I went back to India after completing my MBA. I got an opportunity to establish a center for Canadian education, which was an opportunity through the university to build educational linkages and recruit students from India. So at that time I traveled across India that much, which I hadn't traveled while living in India.
Okay.
And that was an eye-opener for me, because India itself is such a big country, which we don't understand while living in India, that it is like a country within countries when you travel across the country. So that knowledge of traveling across India, meeting within India people from different states, gave me a lot of learning about my own country, actually.
Nice. So what are some of the positions that you've held thus far with whatever you have done?
Sure. So my first role was in India to manage and open the Center for Canadian Education for the university. And after that, I came back. I got married in between because I was in India. So I came back with my wife, and we started living in Vancouver. At that time, I started working for New York Institute of Technology, which was a branch campus, which is a branch campus of a US institution. So that gave me insight of US higher education. And building on that, I got an opportunity to go to US. So I went to University of California, and I worked in their international department. Again, that was also a great experience for me to understand the US education system, compare it with the Canadian system, and also with the Indian system as well. And then again, in the same role, guiding students to study in US. So in that way, I feel myself very fortunate to have experienced both the Canadian education system and the US higher education system, and again working for both the countries in a way to promote their education among Indian students as well as students from other countries while I was in US.
Nice. So from international student to change maker, making a difference in the educational system and the transition. We want to now know more about the steps that are being taken through Seneca College and through your own initiatives. But before that, it's time for a short break. Welcome back to Spotlight. We are talking to Mr. Prashant Srivastava, Director of South Asia at Seneca College. So with all the experience that you have gained over the years, now tell us a little bit more about what do you think are some of the similarities between the Indian and the Canadian educational systems?
So the similarities are to an extent, but there are much of differences. Similarities would be means both the countries have focused on education. So India has one of the top quality institutions in the world. Means if you name IITs, AIMS, as you are from medical background, so those are the top institutions. But the differences are within both the systems. Is here the system is more uniform. So if you go to a Canadian institution, Canadian college, university, you will find an uniform quality of education. So standards are pretty much uniform. There is no ranking, especially in the college system in Ontario. And in India, things are at different levels. So there could be top quality institution, but then there are many educational institutions which lack basic infrastructure. So quality are the biggest differentiator among both the education system. Other differentiator would be how the education is delivered. Like in my own case, when I was studying, we had a lot of emphasis on memorization and then writing exams based on what we have memorized. And producing it in the assignments, and then we used to get marks. But when I myself started doing it in Canada, I did not get good grades because here everything has to be referenced. So those things were some of my own learning lessons, which I advise students before they start their journey of studying in Canada, that they should be well prepared and they should have a good orientation of the system. For instance, like plagiarism here. So if you write an assignment copying from the internet, or if you are working with your friends and get some help from them, in our culture it's a help, but here it can be a plagiarism, it can be a very serious issue in the academic world. So those are the things I try to advise upcoming students who have aspirations to study in Canada. Also, some of the cultural awareness of Canada, because culturally Canada has a different culture. In sense, our culture, when we study together. When we are eating food, we are eating together. Here it's more independent. So our students, when they come here, they should break those silos. Instead of just be within themselves, they should make friends with other nationalities also, mix with other communities as well. So that will give them a real international experience. So this is my advice, and this is also advice of Seneca College as well to the Indian students, that when they are looking to study in Canada, they should look into this as an international experience for themselves, where they make friends with other nationalities, and then they also try to be independent in their thought process while studying in Canada.
And that also makes it easier for the way of living here in Canada as well, because it's a good transition, not just towards the educational system, but also the way of living.
Way of living.
So it sounds like there's a lot of more emphasis on critical thinking here rather than what comes from, like India, you said, mostly emphasis on memorization.
Yes.
But now, what do you think over the years, has that changed in India with influences like yourself, or in general, because there's a lot of migration between the two countries?
Yes, it is changing, and we can see those trends. So right now, for example, the kind of partners I'm engaging with Seneca, we are seeing that they are on the same page, and their educational system, if not at par, but is pretty much compatible to where we can also have exchanges with students, with faculty. So these are the factors we take as an institution when we look into to partner with an educational institution, that what kind of institution is, what kind of quality parameters they have in place within the system of education.
So now if we hone in on Seneca College, what are some of the programs that are offered for this transition to be easier?
Well, we do offer virtual orientation, which is done by our student services department, and also like online tools are there. So we are using more technology into it, and the website is resourceful. So we try to guide students. Plus, our students, majority of them, they come through a network of agents we work with. And we are very strict in screening our agents who are representing us in India or in other countries. And we coach them, we guide them, we mentor them, we do our outreach, we visit their offices, we meet students there. So we do a lot of outreach activities in guiding students in a right way. As Canada also has seen phenomenal growth in international education, like since 2011, there has been 334% increase of Indian students in Canada. So that growth is phenomenal right now.
Which means it's a positive experience.
Yes. And like when I started working, actually, there were very few students getting visas to study in Canada. But in last 7-8 years, trends have changed. Right now, Canada is the most popular destination for Indian students. We have, as of December 2019, 172,000 Indian students studying in Canada, which is a big number. And same is the trend for permanent residency as well. Like in 2018, among all permanent residents, around 40% were Indians. So Canada has picked up in India pretty well, actually.
Nice. And now, do a lot of these international students, say for like yourself, stay back, or they tend to go back to India?
So international students, like as we define in our world of international education in different categories, strivers, strugglers, high flyers. So we have all type of students coming from India. But many of them, they do stay here because Canada offers one of the most flexible immigration programs. So while they are studying, they can work part-time. When they have completed their studies, they can work full-time up to 3 years. And within that duration, many of them, like me, they choose to apply for their permanent residency and make Canada their permanent homes.
Why not? Land of opportunity,
Yes.
proud Canadians with South Asian roots. We have more to talk about, but before that, it's time for a short break. Welcome back to Spotlight. We are talking to the Director of South Asia at Seneca College, Mr. Prashant Srivastava. So this is great. We heard a lot about how the transition can be made easier and how Seneca College and how leaders like yourself are helping. What's next?
So the next is, this is a perfect time for Canada and India to expand the partnership beyond student recruitment. So we are looking into areas where Canadian students can go to India as well. Also, we are looking into ways to start offering some of our short courses in India, where we partner with educational institutions and provide students some on-ground experience of Canadian education system. So that's the part we are looking at going forward.
Wow, exciting things on the horizon. So where can, you mentioned about how all the information can be found on the website. What is the website?
So website for Seneca College is senecacollege.ca. That is the website. #international will give the web page for international students. So that will be the page students should look at.
Great. So at this moment, I'm going to digress for a bit and then come back to you as a person, as a leader who has done so much for yourself. Apart from helping others, do you have any time for yourself? We heard in passing about your family, so
Yes.
tell us a little bit more.
So my parents, they are living in India. My dad was in civil services and he got retired. So they are my mom and dad. They are living in India as a retired life, and because of my work as well, I see them quite often since I visit India 2 or 3 times a year. Here I'm living with my wife and we have a son, 10-year-old. So my day-to-day activities is from 9 to 9.
Wow.
So in the evening it is with family. So I take every evening to my son to different activities, be it swimming, taekwondo. So that engages me till evening, and weekends also are with family, but I take time to volunteer in the community as well through Indo-Canadian associations. I'm member with the Canada-India Foundation, Indo-Canada Chamber of Commerce, and also with Canada-India Business Council. So I keep interacting in ways I can give back to the society as well. And in terms of other sporting activity, I'm playing cricket.
Nice.
During this summer. We have a team in the Durham region, so I'm a member of that team as well. So that engages me on the weekend activities.
Oh, wow.
So that's how my life is. There is a work and personal life balance.
Nice. So you're an all-rounder, I would say. Which brings me to one point. If I think back to when I grew up in the educational system in India. This part of being an all-rounder is sometimes not emphasized in the Indian educational system. So what has your experience been? I just heard you have your son in many non-academic activities, and you yourself are doing so much more.
Yeah, I think we have to be driven by passion. That's another thing, as in the outset also I mentioned about independent thinking. We should not go in the wave like, maybe what I have done may not be the perfect thing to do. Just after completing engineering, getting into an MBA program, maybe I could have gained some work experience and then got into it. And what I see in Canada is more kids, they get opportunity to be what they want to be So this is what I want, like at least in my future generation with my son, that let him be what he wants to be rather than thinking what I aspire him to become.
Well said. Well, the change is already happening, like you mentioned, and as if we have more people like yourself and we get influence, we can make the system change and work for the better as a whole. It's been a pleasure talking to you today. You have given us so much insight as to how the world can be a better, smaller place if everything becomes more regulated and common.
Yeah.
So do you have any words of advice for our viewers today in terms of how you made the transition happen because you pushed for it and you did not give up easy? So do you have any words of advice?
So I would give a word of advice to future students who are aspiring to study in Canada is they should do a proper research before they make their final decision, and they should go by their passion and their interest rather than thinking of going with the wave that everybody is doing this, so let's do that. You should be an independent thinker, and that will bring the real person out of you, and you will be able to excel in your careers.
Very well said. Thank you so much once again for talking to us and giving us, an insight into the system. We wish you all the best with all the amazing things that are on the horizon.
Thank you, Amitha. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So that was Mr. Prashant Srivastava, Director of South Asia at Seneca College, who has given us insight about the two educational systems and insight about what is being done to make the transition easier. Well, that's a wrap for this week's show. Thank you for watching us. Continue to follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and write to us at spotlight@ethnicchannels.com. Until next week, this is Amithas signing off, encouraging you to use your experience towards helping others.